Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Not rocking the shades at the moment, but what we will be rocking is a screenshotting service. So, image screenshotting to give a preview of what the URL is about to be, or like if you're creating a website, very common. Also for allowing people to never delete tweets for some reason. Anyway, this is the next service we'll be covering, how it was built. So, let's look at the demo, which is listed in the app in question, or in the article rather. So here's the last post I made. It's about markdown to HTML. Now let's say we wanted to screenshot this and make sure that that jerk BTO Pro never lives down this article. Look at that terrible thing that he wrote somewhere in there. Okay, so I'm going to take the demo here. It's within this open storybook. You can just search for screenshot and it'll come up as a core service. Paste this in and let's inspect so we can see what's going on. Move this over there. Okay. So I'm going to hit get screenshot and we see this is going to ping a screenshot service. And header of this is it's requesting screenshotUrl.elmzln.vercel.app/API/screenshot URL. Ooh, there it is. You're not getting away from me, BTO Pro. I gotcha. So what the payload is of this is I'm sending across, hey, I want the image returned to be at a quality of 80. This is relative to JPEG compression. So we're just saying, give me a pretty high quality version of this. And then the URL in question to capture. So I'm sending across URL to question, in question to capture, which can be seen there. I hit get screenshot, nothing crazy. Then we go to preview, and we see that I get back two things. One that is saying, hey, this is what the original URL was. And then this huge data blob, which, as you can see over here, since it's finished, right here is the image. And neat thing about this, it is the entire article. So there's nowhere you can hide, BTO Pro. I see what you wrote down here in paragraph 6. On this date, I will have this forever to hold over you. So let's see how that works, because in my head it wasn't really that hard to build a screenshotting service, but it does seem like a really sophisticated neat thing. What I ran into more so was the issues with getting this thing out to production than actually making it work. Anyway, so here's what is involved in our screenshot URL. Now you'll notice immediately this is not in our mono repo with the other examples that I will show in this thread to the issues, which I have in the writing a little bit. So because of the way this works, let's trace how it works. In a second, I'll show what that issue is. But so I get the posts. I go, hey, what's the URL to capture out of the standard post body? We use all the same type of request helpers, just like the other examples. And then I have this get browser instance where the magic happens. But let's just walk through what these options are so you can better understand how we would actually go about taking a screenshot of something. So if you're not familiar with Puppeteer, it's what's powering this. Puppeteer, think of it like it's pulling the strings, typing the keys on a headless version of a browser. So imagine you have Chrome up, you go and type in the URL, and you hit go, the page loads. Imagine you were able to orchestrate that so that automated testing, screenshotting services, things of that nature could just run and give you the exact result, not some sort of similar HTML rendering. It is literally using the Chromium engine to fire this thing up. So we make sure we have our required URL. Then we pass in a, hey, let's just make sure it's got HTTPS on it. So we're calling a real address. Then we've got some basic browser options here. In this case, I'm saying give it a full 60 seconds to load this web page. It's a little bit much, I know. And then wait until network idle is 2. Now, there's some interesting options in here. This is basically saying don't consider the request complete until we have at most 2 threads going to load assets. What does that mean? I could say make sure it's 0. And there are certain web pages that will never hit 0 because of their analytics engines and whatnot. So 2 is a pretty good way of saying, imagine the web page goes to load. There's hundreds of JavaScript, CSS, HTML, preloaded assets, all those things. Don't take the screenshot until we've got down to 2 of those that are running. All right, so everything else is loaded. We're presumably just about to wrap up at the end. Let's go and take that screenshot. So the quality of this screenshot here is going to default to 75, otherwise parse what the quality sent is, which I sent it as 80. We're going to have an encoding of JPEG type to return is JPEG, and the encoding is going to be base64 here in our screenshot options. So then let's try something and hope it works. So do a try catch finally here. We are working with a browser instance, which is effectively opening another program. It's like you double clicked on Chrome. So I'm going to make sure that if something goes wrong, we're able to, at least get some response and close that browser. But get browser instance. Let's see what get browser instance does. So get browser instance imports Chromium from Chrome AWS Lambda. Then we say, do we have an executable path for Chromium? And here's where a bit of the digging through tutorials magic comes into play. If we don't have an executable path, this implies we are running Chromium locally, which means we need to import Puppeteer. So think of this as you're doing local development. I'm in the process of building this. I'm going to need to load full copy of Puppeteer, which is going to load a full version of Chromium in order to do the screenshotting. The weird thing about how development of this played out, this was actually way faster when I did it locally on my machine, because it's like the resource is there, it loads the app, it goes and gets the thing, it loads off your network connection, screenshot, and it's to you. It was extremely fast. Versus throwing this out into a Lambda, there is this helper library, fortunately provided by Chrome or Google, to specifically come up with ways of running this in a Lambda. Lambda has certain file size requirements, time before it bombs out. And so this ensures that you can actually run this successfully. However, you then have to rectify the difference between local development and production, which not a huge fan of having to do that, but that's what this is helping do. So effectively, we're getting either the local executable copy or some magic cloud-based one. We're going to launch that instance. It's going to be headless. It will have a viewport of 1280 by 720 just for fun. And we're going to ignore HTTPS errors for the purposes of the screenshot tool. And you can see if we didn't have an executable path, right, we send it this way. Or we did have an executable path. This would be that it was out in the cloud. So I do have some slightly different requirements just because of the way I was messing with this. So all right, let's go to screenshotUrl then, right? So we have an instance of Chrome. We're going to create a new page, and then we're going to tell that page, right? So it's as if we clicked a tab. We're going to tell that page to go to our URL in question, waiting on these requirements before it loads. So it's as a promise. You can async await. Imagine the browsers are spinning, it's loading the thing. Now, I have special support for Twitter for when we need to capture those mean tweets forever to bury people 20 years from now. So in order to bury people 20 years from now, we can use this cool thing called wait for selector. So this isn't another promise. It's going to wait for the page to have this loaded as a valid selector. In this case, this is the first tweet on the page. So little gimmicky here, right? Like if Twitter changes their structure, you would have to change this API because this is walking through a CSS selector structure here. So I then get that element by awaiting it. And you see they even have this little like jQuery-esque targeting thing, which is kind of funny. I load that as an element, and then I take a screenshot of just the element. So just that little portion, the tweet on the page type of a thing. Then I get that as base64 in return, because in my screenshot options, I've said the encoding should be base64 and giving it as a JPEG. So right there is enough to do that. Now, if it's not Twitter, then we just say, give me the full page, which is how it's getting that whole scroll in the dev.to article. Then from there, I've got base64, which is a standard response. I'm going to send back the URL to capture, and I'm going to cache this for, I don't even know what that ends up being, 1800 seconds. And that's all there is to sending it back. So let's look at quickly how we actually use this in that demo code. So if I search for where I'm using this, it's in something called docx example, just to throw it in somewhere, right? So it gets that HTML HTML decorated code there via lit, right? And I say screenshot URL link. So when they click that, then you're going to get URL that captures value. We're going to send it off to this service, and we're going to send it back to this response in the end, which then I'm just taking and doing a very basic image is going to get this data image slash JPEG base64. the response is base64, and voila, you get your image in question. So I could use this to take screenshots of other things, as I said. So if we go up to the top, all right, so there's my dev.to article. I wanted to go to twitter.com/BTOpro. Call off. It should be sitting here waiting. And Twitter takes a little bit longer in part because it's going to hit the endpoint, it's loading the whole page, and then it's waiting for the tweet in question to actually be loaded in such a way that it can present it to you. There we go. It does take quite a while for that aspect of this to work. So you can see here we have this don't miss what's happening, right? And this is some other stuff that you can do for trying to avoid the fact that it is a screenshot. So you can tell it like, have the page load, wait a certain amount of time, then take the screenshot, right? Because in this case, there's this like thing that jogs up from the bottom and says like, don't miss out on a moment, or like those really obnoxious like GDRP cookie messages, right? And all the advertisements that flash over. So you could script it to make sure it clicks on those X's to close things and whatever before it takes a screenshot. But I think it's an interesting use case. How we're going to actually use this in a production environment would be when we load up hacks.psu.edu, which is our hosted copy of Hacks for software as a service. Anyone at the university can do it, and that they log into Hacks. That we have these little bands. There we go. These little bars that just show like nothing of value other than like, hey, here's the stuff you've made before, and you can search for your courses. I can filter down to my ISD courses that I used to teach. So what we were thinking is on here would be even better if there was a nice little screenshot of what the actual site looked like. And every time you update it, it goes and hits this service, grabs a new screenshot because maybe you changed the theme, stuff like that. So this isn't like a super high priority requirement. It was mostly as we were building this out, or as I was building these out to test the microservice architecture, it was like, okay, this is a prime use case for this, right? It's one-off functionality. It's not specific to what we're building with Hacks or other backend systems of any kind. It would be awesome if we could just, the same way I hit an NPM package and magically get this capability as a developer. It'd be awesome if I could then just hit that as a web developer and just, hey, screenshot a thing. So we're mostly just setting this in motion so that when it becomes a priority to add that to that system. So make sure that you keep checking out articles of publishing this thread. I'm going to keep documenting other endpoints. There are other endpoints listed in that storybook, including the screenshot tool. Coming up shortly is going to be Simple Image, which does some pretty impressive things as far as image conversion and doing it on the fly. And it is a full-blown web component tied directly to micro web service. Might cover that one next. So make sure you hit up hackstheweb.org if you're interested in this or anything else we're doing, or on BTO Pro on the Twitter webs, or on dev.to where I'm writing this article. Next time I might have the glasses on. I'm not entirely sure. Catch you later.